Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, fire danger graphic. A few areas there of barely getting into the high category. Up over the Yukon Flats there along the Yukon River, a couple of zones there. And also over the eastern interior, or actually the north side of the eastern Alaska Range, say around Delta Junction area, some high fire danger there. Also in the Matanuska Valley and the Copper River Basin in the valley there, areas getting into the high, possibly very high, but really pretty minimal compared to what it could be this time of year. And from there, moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, we've got a flood watch out for the shaded areas there for the Little Chena and Chattanooga rivers. That kicks in for, or the watch period is Saturday evening through Monday morning. 1 to 3 inches of rain expected to fall across those areas there from the central interior into the Fairbanks area, as I mentioned, Little Chena, Chattanooga rivers, for example, and also the small streams draining the Elliott Highway, along the Elliott Highway. And again, that's for Saturday evening through Monday morning, as heavier rain expected to move in during that time period and could drop as much as 3 inches of rain over the area. And from there, that's the only watch area or warnings or advisories is just for those areas. But also high water expected for the upper Susitna Valley due to the heavy rain that's going to come in again, probably starting Saturday afternoon, continuing through Sunday. And that'll cause it's not a flood watch out, but it'll cause small river streams to rise in the, especially the northern Susitna Valley, Sunday night into Monday. And from there, satellite imagery shows southeasterly flow up across the Northeast Pacific, off the southeast coast there, right into southern Alaska. Moisture starting to increase in clouds, especially along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, but only a few hundredths of an inch of rain fallen by mid-afternoon. Cordova had 1/100th of an inch. Seward picked up about 2/100ths of an inch, and that's about it, but a little bit heavier to the west, although Kodiak only had 5/100ths of an inch. By comparison, King Salmon, Sleepmute, and Koliginek picked up 1/4 of an inch today, while Kilbuck had 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Farther to the north, Ambler picked up about 2/10ths of an inch. There, all the areas over the western interior there on the east side of a trough axis that's in close to the coastline there, and you can see the wind flow more or less northwesterly behind that across the Pribilofs. Kind of gusty northerly winds through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. 25-mile-an-hour gusts at Tin City, while Gamble had north to northeast winds gusting to 31 miles an hour. And a frontal system bringing rain into the central Aleutians there. That brought about a 1/4 of an inch into Adak in the last 12-hour period. Wind's not really too strong with that system there, but beginning to push eastward, and will push in toward the Fox Islands later tonight. But the trough along the west coast there bringing general area of cloudiness and areas of rain, heaviest again over the Bristol Bay area and southwest interior, with a little bit lighter up to the north, and more showery across the Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range. But moisture is on the increase there over southern Cook Inlet and the southern Kenai Peninsula. Nothing serious yet. Isolated thunderstorms developing Copper River Basin and up over the eastern interior, with some showers all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, not a bad day across the Panhandle. Some sunshine and light winds, and temperatures in the 60s to lower 70s. Warmer, though, over the eastern interior. Chicken had 80 degrees with sunshine this afternoon. Eagle right around 79 degrees. And 76 degrees at Big Lake there in the Susitna Valley, with 60s and lower 70s across Copper River Basin into the Matanuska Susitna Valley, northern Cook Inlet, as well as the Kenai Peninsula. And for tonight, clouds definitely increase across the Panhandle with increasing chances of moisture as well. Otherwise, the North Gulf Coast stays dry. Copper River Basin, look for some lingering showers over Prince William Sound. And moisture tending to increase here for Cook Inlet, especially southern Cook Inlet and the Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range, but the interior will stay dry. Northern Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin into the much of the central interior. Some showers out to the west around the Seward Peninsula. And that new low forms along the frontal system, pushing in toward the eastern Aleutians. Look for rain, fog, and drizzle to push across that area later this evening, and then pushing toward the western Alaska Peninsula, False Pass late tonight toward morning. Otherwise, low clouds and fog for the Bering Sea. A little bit stronger low back to the west there will keep it breezy. Possible gusts 25 miles an hour western Aleutians with numerous showers. Low clouds and fog, a good possibility from the Bering Strait. St. Lawrence Island, right up around the Arctic coast with that high pressure area. And the outlook for tomorrow, again, isolated thunderstorms possible over the eastern interior, but nothing too extensive. It looks cloudier and definitely wetter and cooler across southern Alaska, Cook Inlet into the Madanuska-Sitna Valley, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, periods of rain, showers for the Panhandle, and isolated thunderstorms once again, as I mentioned, the eastern interior. Otherwise, another partly to mostly sunny day up in that area, central interior, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, down toward maybe Fairbanks. Temperatures back into the 70s, mid to upper, but cooler along the Arctic coast, low clouds and fog and easterly breezes. And that front really washing out there to the west brings a chance of moisture into the Pribilofs and lingers over the eastern Aleutians, but windier and a little wetter out over the far western Aleutians, mostly west of Adak to Shimei and Attu. Otherwise, eastern Bering Sea, light winds, low clouds, and fog right up through the Bering Strait again. A lot less wind for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait with slacker gradient, but low clouds and fog possible anywhere across that area. And then the outlook for Sunday, second day of the week, in that low center tracks eastward to near the Pribilofs or St. George Island by mid-afternoon Sunday. Look for low clouds, fog, and drizzle with that, but light winds. A little breezier out over the western and central Aleutian areas. Probably see small craft advisories. Northwest winds may be gusting to 30, 35 miles an hour tops, but much lighter for the Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula, where you'll see low clouds, fog, rain, and drizzle. Another trough will bring some showers farther up the Alaska Peninsula, and it looks wet over the southern part of the state. Again, with the heaviest rainfall occurring over the northern Sitna Valley across the Alaska Range into the Fairbanks area and back to the west, with lighter amounts extending all the way to the eastern Arctic coast. And another trough keeps it cloudy and showery over the southeast coast. Just an isolated thunderstorm possible over the Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, maybe the eastern interior. Low temperatures for the Panhandle tonight, 55 to 60, and about the same there over the central and eastern interior. Lower to mid-50s, southern Alaska, Copper River Basin, Kodiak Island, upper 40s to lower 50s, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians, near 50 for the Pribilofs, lower 40s, St. Lawrence Island, and the western Seward Peninsula, and lower to in the 30s for the Arctic coast. That'll be followed highs tomorrow afternoon, again pushing back up toward 80 for, say, Fairbanks, and Eagle, Chicken again could reach 80 degrees, as well as Chokyitzik and Fort Yukon, otherwise mid-70s in the central interior. Ambler possibly pushing 70 degrees tomorrow, upper or mid-60s for the Kuskokwim Valley, and then cooler as you head out toward the coast, mid-50s Nunivak Island, and upper 50s to lower 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. Look for a high about 60 for Unalaska, 56 for St. Paul, lower to mid-50s for the Aleutians, upper 30s Central Arctic coast, otherwise 40s to near 50 over the North Slope. Panhandle, mid-60s for your highs, and that'll be followed by lows in the 50s for the southeast coast, lower to mid-50s again over southern Alaska, some areas in the upper 40s, Copper River Basin, lower to mid-50s Alaska Peninsula, and low a little below freezing there on the central Arctic coast, otherwise in the 30s, and that'll be followed by highs in the 40s. In some cases, maybe only the upper 30s, as in the case of Wainwright, but much cooler over the interior now with the rain and clouds. Lower to mid-60s is all that's expected. Lower to mid-60s also south central Alaska, the Panhandle, and 50s out over the Bering Sea.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Saturday morning. IFR Arctic coast, North Slope, and southwestward across the western Brooks Range into the Kotzebue Sound area and along the Buckland area. Otherwise, southern Seward Peninsula marginal, then solid IFR for the Bering Sea from the strait all the way down across all of the Aleutians, right on up into the southwest interior. IFR in the increase into southern Cook Inlet from Kodiak Island. and northward across the central and southern Kuskokwim Valley, but VFR to start, northern Cook Inlet, North Gulf Coast, northward through the central and eastern interior, right up to the eastern north slope. And the Panhandle, marginal VFR. For the afternoon, marginal VFR for the southeast coastal areas, including the inside waters with the exception of Lincoln Island Glacier Bay. IFR from roughly Yakutat westward along the North Gulf Coast, covering Prince William Sound, most of the Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet into the Alaska Range, and then marginal VFR, Shelikof Strait, Kodiak Island, with IFR on the east side of the island. Marginal VFR widespread across southwest interior, right up across the lower Yukon River Valley area, and IFR pretty well entrenched over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, marginal for the Alaska Peninsula, IFR for the central North Slope and Arctic Coast. Sunday morning, IFR central and eastern Arctic Coast with eastern North Slope and the Brooks Range in an IFR zone, VFR for the Northwest Coast and down into the Selawik, Kobuk, and some of the Koyukuk Valley VFR with some marginal VFR, and then the eastern interior from the eastern Yukon Flats southward to the Alaska Range looks VFR, IFR, central interior, right on down across Denali Park in the western Alaska Range, part of the Kuskokwim Valley, all the southwest coast, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Bering Sea, IFR, Gulf of Alaska, IFR, as well as the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, marginal for the Panhandle. Afternoon, a little bit of an improvement, but not much out west. Still solid IFR for the Aleutians and much of the Bering Sea. Marginal VFR, Bristol Bay, most of southern Alaska, marginal VFR. And that kind of breaks out to some VFR there, northern Kodiak Island into southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay. Northern Cook Inlet, possibly VFR, as well as southern Susitna Valley and the Matanuska Valley. Eastern interior, VFR. Panhandle, marginal. And from there, passes Anatuvik, starting out IFR and then becoming marginal VFR. Gradual improvement throughout the day. Be a little better for Adigan, IFR to start, but optimistically becoming VFR into the afternoon, or in the latter part of the afternoon, some point in the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional IFR conditions tomorrow. And for rainy, call it marginal for that pass on either entrance. And windy, VFR. Isabel, marginal. Ventasta, marginal. Tanita, VFR, western eastern approaches. And for Portage, IFR, lowest conditions on the eastern entrance. Could be low IFR possibly on the east side. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels. Colder air along and just off the Arctic coast there at about 2,000 feet. And then much warmer, though, as you get in just to the Brooks Range and over the eastern interior, 10 to 12,000 feet there, with that extends down to the northern Panhandle, 8,000 feet just west of Dixon Entrance. A little cooler out along the west coast. Chuck CC, 4,000 feet there along the coast of the Russian Far East, 6,000 feet Bristol Bay, and then 12 to 14,000 feet southern Bering and the central Aleutians ahead of the system farther to the west. Icing. A band of icing out over the Bering Sea, mostly away from the land area, just starting to push in toward the Pribilofs of the isolated moderate variety. And southern Alaska, moisture pushing northward into the North Gulf Coast and then across southern Alaska. It could be some areas of considerable moderate rime icing coming in there with lighter amounts and less of a threat down toward the southern southeast coast. Jet stream, upper level low off the Panhandle, 100 knot south or southwest jet there, cutting across the Queen Charlotte's and Dixon Entrance. And 9,000 feet, 55 knot west southwesterlies over the Aleutians, 50 knot southeasterlies off the southeast coast, 3,000 feet, 35 to 45 knot winds there off the southern Panhandle a ways, and 40 knots along and just south of the central Aleutians. Turbulence, look for moderate chop, occasional considerable moderate chop below 8,000 feet for the western central Aleutians, light to isolated moderate for the North Gulf Coast and Panhandle.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
And we love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread.
Right.
The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt.
Sure.
So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
This sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano
it is
going off.
erupting. Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength?
What is a wavelength?
That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. It's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis finished mid-afternoon today on the 31st of July 2020, showing heavier ice farther to the north than it was earlier in the week or at the beginning of the week off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but still some thinner ice there from the central coast, Point Barrow, eastward over to around Kaktovik before that even pulls off the coast as you head in toward Demarcation Point, Mackenzie Bay area. And from there, coastal water forecast, southeast winds, small craft advisories for the Panhandle all along the coast tomorrow for 25 to 30 knot winds and seas 9 to 11 feet. Small craft advisories also for Clarence Strait, southeast 25 knots, 6 foot seas, southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, and south 15 Lynn Canal with seas running 3 feet. And for the Sunday outlook, lighter winds now, especially along the outer coastline, southwest 10 on the south coast, 6 foot seas, and south 10 to 15 knots, 7 to 8 foot seas on the north coast. Lynn Canal, wind south 15 knots, seas 3 feet, and the central and southern inside waters variable to south at 10 knots with 2 foot seas. Prince William Sound, northeast 20 tomorrow with seas at 4 feet. We've got gale warnings up for the eastern North Gulf Coast. For tomorrow, for northeast winds at 35 knots and 7 foot seas. Otherwise, small craft advisories for the western North Gulf Coast. Winds will be out of the east there at 25. Barren Islands, northwest 15. 10 knot winds for Kamishak Bay from the northwest. West-southwest breeze for Cook Inlet at 10 knots with 2 foot seas. And for Sunday, south to southwest, 15 knots for Cook Inlet, 3 to 4 foot seas. Kamishak Bay, southerlies at 20 knots. Southwest 24. The Barren Islands, and for the eastern North Gulf Coast, coming down from the gale force winds forecast for tomorrow to 20 knots out of the southeast with 8 foot seas. Prince William Sound, southeast 20, seas 3 feet. Kodiak Island, north winds 10 knots. Alaska Peninsula, north winds 10 knots, seas 3 to 4 feet. Bristol Bay, north winds 10 knots with 3 foot seas. Those change direction, pick up a little bit for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southwest, 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 9 foot seas. Bristol Bay southeast at 15, and south 20 knots there for the east side of Kodiak Island. Seas running at about 8 feet, otherwise Shelikof Strait looking at southerly winds at 15. For Unalaska Island, south to southeast, 15 knots, 4 to 6 foot seas. Unmak Island, west to southwest at 20 knots with 6 to 9 foot seas. Adak and Atka, small craft advisories, 25 knot winds sustained from the southwest, 7 to 10 foot seas, and 30 knot winds from Amchitka Island westward to Shemya with seas at 13 feet. Those will turn west-northwest at 30 knots, but hold on to the 30 knot wind speed there for the western Aleutians, 12 to 13 foot seas, and westerlies 25 to 30 knots there for the central Aleutians, seas up to 14 feet. For the Fox Islands, west-southwest, 20 to mostly 25 knots or small craft advisories, and seas up to 12 feet. For the southwest coast tomorrow, northeast at 10, Pribilof southeast at 15, northeast 15 St. Matthew Island, north winds 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island. That holds through Sunday as well. Look for northeast winds along the Yukon Delta coast at 20 knots, 25 knot northerlies now for the St. Matthew Island area, southeast 15 for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, and southwest at 20 for the Pribilofs. For the Arctic coast, winds will be northeast, the entire stretch of the coastline there from Cape Thompson all the way over to Demarcation Point. 15 knots for the central and east side, and then from about Point Lay on down to Cape Thompson, there'll be 20 knots, and then northerlies at 20 knots from Wales to Cape Thompson. And then we've got small craft advisories for the area from Cape Thompson up to probably Point Lay, but the central coast sustained northeast at 20, and small craft advisories again for the eastern Arctic coast for east-northeast winds at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. For tonight, low pressure develops along a weakening front as it pushes rain, fog, and drizzle into the eastern Aleutians and far western Alaska Peninsula toward morning. Otherwise, look for light rain, fog, and drizzle for Bristol Bay into southern Cook Inlet and northern Kodiak Island. Showers over the southwest interior. And for tomorrow, rain increasing over southern Alaska. It's to be one more day where temperatures push 80 degrees over the eastern interior areas around Fairbanks, low clouds and fog in the Arctic coast. Then on Sunday, flood watches are out for the Chena-Chattanooga River for possible flooding with 1 to 3 inches of rain likely to fall in that area.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.